What is going on, Badger fans? We got Coach's Corner. Let's talk through what it looked like through Coach's eyes week one, the game plan that felt a little conservative, the rush defense, players that may be surprised on the rewatch, all that and more. Locked On Badger with a great guest. You know him on Wisconsin. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Thank you so much for tuning in, for being a part of this community, for being a part of this show. I really appreciate it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Head over to FanDuel.com to get started. Spice up your sports weekend, your sports week over at FanDuel.com. And we got that dude. We got Coach on the show. Doing our Coach's Corner. We did these all last year. Really excited for it. Let me pull my overlay up here. I just took it down for some reason. But Coach, as I'm fighting through my graphical issues here, welcome to the show, Coach's Corner. I think let's just start with the big picture. And the thing that most fans seem to talk about after week one was the seemingly conservative play calling, where either our inability or unwillingness to go deep, to push the ball. Tyler Van Dyke, 5.3 yards per attempt. What were your thoughts rewatching the game on that?
I think number one, it was playing into the idea of taking what the defense is giving you, and the defense that Western Michigan was presenting was three high, bail technique, even on vertical routes. Their corners were trying to stay on top the whole time and playing from the top down. I mean, they're dropping 7 in coverage now, and they're dropping guys farther back, even in flat coverage as well. So that was Western Michigan's game plan. It was to not get beat deep. So the Badgers took advantage of it, or they took the holes in the defense. That was in the intermediate passing zone. That was in the up the seams on some occasions. I think they were a little vanilla. I think vanilla is maybe a better term than conservative. I think they didn't dig too deep in the playbook because I don't think they had to. I don't think they wanted to because of how competitive the Big Ten season is going to be at Alabama in 2 weeks. But Western Michigan didn't want to get beat deep. So they played in a situation where they were going to force Wisconsin to beat them with 1,000 paper cuts. And that's what they did.
Here's where I push back a little bit. And again, I think these conversations are great. And you've gone through the all 22, which is, I think, incredible. Go over to check out Coach Anderson's channel for sure to check out his breakdown. Definitely always want to highlight the work you're doing. But here's where I'd push back a little bit. I'd feel better, and I think Badger fans would probably feel a little better if that death by 1,000 paper cuts was more like 8-yard run, 12-yard run, 6-yard run. And it felt like it wasn't that effective offensively when you look. Sure, they strung together long drives, and they won the game. But they scored 28 in a game they were favored by 24.5. I think Ches ended up at 3.9 per carry. Tywee was 4.4. That doesn't really necessarily feel like a really efficient use of take what they give you.
No, and there was some issues, again, with how the Western Michigan defensive front was playing. They were playing a lot of 5-man surfaces, which made the outside zone that they're running effective on the first level, but that sometimes means you're going to have second level defenders who come unblocked. Made a couple not great reads on outside zone, meaning more we made the first initial read right. I know Ches a couple times cut it back maybe a little bit too hard. He had a couple instances where he got a little happy feet in the gap. And then Western Michigan was fitting their safeties downhill fast. So I think it was, again, we all want gashing runs. So do I. I would have liked to have seen more. But to say that the run game was ineffective, I think, is not entirely accurate. I thought if I'm looking at it for me grading the film in comparison to last year, it's not great. I'm not going to lie. But I saw improvement.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the offensive lineman blocked particularly well. I saw improvement from Jack Nelson in the run game, Riley Mallman in the run game. I thought when Joe Huber had a couple bad reps, he came back and had some great reps. I thought Jake Renfro played solid. I thought Joe Brunner shows that he deserves to play. They did their job, and sometimes when everyone does their job, there's still guys unblocked. And that's where the running back has to make guys miss or do like Tui and run people over. That sometimes is it. You have 6 guys you can block with, and the defense gets 7, 8 guys in the box. Badger fans, does this sound familiar? The difference is, when Jonathan Taylor and Melvin Gordon were doing it, they were Jonathan Taylor and Melvin Gordon. All love to Ches and Tui. They're not Jonathan Taylor and Melvin Gordon in college football. So what runs that would have been burst for 25, 30 yards 10 years ago are maybe what we're seeing now sometimes. So they've got to play better for sure. But it can be cleaned up. It's being a little bit smarter with reads.
Yeah, and I certainly don't think the running game was ineffective. I think it was maybe a little not as efficient as we had hoped. I thought both running backs played really hard. I thought they ran their butts off. And I thought the interior trio of the offensive linemen, as the game went on, I thought they were really progressively better and better. I thought there was really nice reps from Brunner, from Renfro, from Huber. So, yeah, I think it was more like brutally effective than it was like brutally efficient.
Yeah. There, and that would be an accurate way to put it. I'm not sitting here saying that. Oh wow, that was a clinic on outside zone. I'm not, but it wasn't bad. Wasn't great. Wasn't bad. It's a start. If I compare to where we started against Buffalo to where we're starting now, I see incremental improvement. I see enough to let me know. All right, I've seen that we're learning, and we're getting better. It's still maybe not the great team that we all thought they were going to be 2 years ago, but I don't think it's as doom and gloom as everybody I listened to the day after the game is like, is this the end of Wisconsin football?
Yeah, I heard about
it. Oregon beat Idaho by 10 points. Are we to say that Oregon is not the 4th best team in the country because they beat Idaho by 10? So
I listened to an Oregon podcast.
I think we can calm down. I think we can calm down a little bit. I see the concern. The concern is there, but it's not like we have to go back to the drawing board and start all over because we only scored 28 points on Western Michigan.
Right, and I've made this point before. I think with early season stuff, and I made this point with the basketball analogy, but you don't overreact, but you also react a little bit, right? Like, and where the sweet spot is what everybody's trying to find. But no, I agree with you. You certainly don't overreact and say it's not going to work. It's all over. Here's my question for you. I think this is the follow up that I think a lot of Badger fans would just have is, okay, so Western Michigan, they played a little softer in coverage. They played a little deeper. They weren't going to get beat deep, but that's not the last school's going to be able to do that. Like if you're Wisconsin, and I think some of it was they just didn't need to. Like I really think they had a game plan coming in, and they just kind of realized, all right, we're just going to kind of crock pot this game. We're going to slow cook it. But there's going to be other teams that play 3 deep, that give up space, and you still have to be able to threaten vertically.
And I think we had a couple situations where, unfortunately, a couple times when we had breakups in pass protection, were on plays where they dialed up. I think it was Tretch on a post and Pauling running across or all the way across the field to spike it and go vertical on the double post concept. There's situations where they did scheme up shots, but pass protection issues. There was an instance where Tyler maybe got a little happy feet and he took off earlier than he might have needed to. But yeah, they didn't just line up and go 4 verts all day, which is I think what Badger fans expected. Because when they hear air raid, it's just say, yep, spread them out 4 verts all day. They did run 4 verts a lot, ton, but the routes convert to pitches and comebacks. So it's gonna have. I mean, yeah, we can force the ball downfield. And there will be situations where they'll have to force the ball downfield. I don't think they had to force the ball downfield against Western Michigan.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and just get some players that maybe on the rewatch popped to Coach Anderson. Maybe they still got out a little bit more when you rewatch them, vice the first game broadcast. Then we're going to talk a little bit about Tyler Van Dyke, his thoughts on TVD's first start in Madison. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers with the great Coach Anderson. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Listen, much like Coach Anderson and myself, FanDuel and Locked On has a great relationship, right? They partnered together. We partnered together, and you just don't get rid of good partners. FanDuel is here for you right now. Great offer. America's #1 sports book. Now through September 22nd. We all know the NFL is almost here. We're all football fans. We're all college fans. A lot of us like NFL as well. Right now through September 22nd, over at FanDuel, you're going to get, if you bet a $5, you're going to get 3 weeks free trial NFL Sunday ticket. Catch all the out-of-market NFL games if you have the YouTube platform. If you have the YouTube base plan, you can be able to watch every single regular season out-of-market NFL game over at courtesy of FanDuel.com. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Catch all of those NFL games. All right, let's get Coach back on here. Let's talk. I kind of want to start with just TVD. Your general thoughts on the good that you saw, the bad that you saw. How was his first start in Madison for you?
I think it was okay. I think he looked a lot more comfortable executing the offense than Tanner Mordecai did against Buffalo. I think he's maybe heard everyone talking about how he can fit the ball into tight windows, and he had a couple throws in that game that were straight up NFL throws.
Mm-hmm.
Standing on one hash mark and throwing completely to the other side of the field, throwing it 40 yards on a straight line. Those are impressive. He didn't try to force it into windows, which was good. There's a difference between throwing into tight windows and forcing it into tight windows. So that was good to see. He had a couple instances, especially I think in the second half, where he got a little antsy and he took off when maybe he didn't have to. But all in all, I would say pretty solid. Showed that he has feet. He knows when to pull the ball. Executed some RPOs really well. He did a lot of the little things well that it took us a long time into last season to see Mordecai do. I mean, there are plays we ran virtually every game last season that he maybe completed twice. And Van Dyke hit it 2 or 3 times in this game. So that's encouraging. I'd like to see him, again, get a little more comfortable. I'd like to see that. I want them to tighten up. They had a couple instances where either he read the leverage wrong or the receiver read the leverage wrong and took away big chances. I think it took away one touchdown for sure on the first drive. That was there if we were on the same page. That's going to get better with time. That's going to get better when they get into the flow of things. But solid.
Yeah, I thought some of the throws, the intermediate throws in the first half were really nice. He had a really nice one to Bryson Green. I thought that was one of his better throws. I thought the one where he broke to the right, pressure. He's falling down to find Tretch, extending the play, keeping his head down. I thought that was one of his best throws of the day. The problem is, like, he followed that throw up with maybe one of his worst throws of the day where, I mean, against a good secondary, I think that's a pick. And then he had the fumble on a scramble on a 3rd and 19 where it just feels like as a veteran quarterback, you got to have ball security in that situation. It feels like a lot of what you said, I think a lot of the little things he did well, hit tight ends twice off that RPO action, which I thought were really nice. But it's a couple of those big moments where he can't put the ball in harm's way like that.
Right. And I think one of them in particular that everyone's calling on was when he seemingly threw the ball 20 yards over Will Pauling's head and skipped into the end zone.
That was on the first drive?
Yeah. And where everyone was calling that out. Pauling ran the wrong route. If Pauling would have kept going up the hash mark, he would have hit him in his right ear hole and would have been a touchdown. Maybe a little high, but Will Pauling's making that catch. He read the leverage wrong, in my opinion. I'm not in the receiver room, so we'll see what Kenny Guyton says to him there. But from what I saw and what I think Van Dyke saw, Pauling read the leverage wrong. But when we look at it on the TV broadcast or we look at it through eyes of a fan, we just see the result. We see the ball skipping at the feet of the safety and Van Dyke throwing it over Pauling's head by 10 yards. And so that's probably the scramble situation. Yeah, he's definitely got to have two hands on the ball. Obviously, no doubt there. So yeah, little things, but again, it's not like where situations last year, like we've talked about, where Mordecai would get to the top of his drop, get antsy, and take off. I don't think we had any situations like that. In fact, I know one play in particular, he stood there and got smacked in the mouth, and we ended up getting, I believe, roughing the passer on, but he knew he was going to get smacked in the mouth because of it was empty. It was the protection. He was in charge of that linebacker, and throw the ball and get ready to get smacked in the mouth. That's what happened. And he stood there and he took it and he threw a decent ball. It got tipped or something like that. But that's encouraging. He has to get, we want to see him be aggressive, right? But the situation has to call for aggressiveness too.
Talk to me about some surprise guys. Offense, defense. Rewatching the film, who kind of stood out to you a little bit more in a good way?
Tucker Ashcraft. He'd be my first guy, and not for the reasons that everyone would expect. I thought his blocking was much improved. He was tenacious in blocking. That first fourth and one that Cheds broke, he finished his guy, took him to the ground, and he played with a little bit of swagger through the game. Had a situation when after TVD scored his touchdown on the draw, he started talking back to the safety he was covering. And, that was good to see. I like seeing that. I thought Joe Brunner, for his first start, looked really solid. Consistent, really good on pulls. He was pretty solid on pass protection. He moves pretty good. I mean, he's a grizzly bear, but he's a quick moving grizzly bear. So that was good to see. And defensively, yeah, it's the usual suspects. And Xavier Lucas, that's kind of how defense is right now. The usual suspects and Xavier Lucas. So offensively, I'm really looking at those guys because that kind of last year was our major talking point about how the offensive line and stuff like that. So it's good to see we have improvement in line. Good to see Tucker Ashcraft is growing into his role a little bit better. And so those are positive signs.
Yeah, and the thing with Ashcraft, it's so easy to forget, but the dude's a true sophomore, like playing in big physical games. Like in a lot of years under the PC and even going back further, Bielema and those eras, like he'd have a redshirted last year. He'd be in the 3 deep this year, getting like spot reps, and then he'd be playing next year as a redshirt sophomore, and we'd be like, that'd be our first exposure to him, right?
And I think that would have been the plan. If that would have been the plan last year, if we didn't have 2 retirements after spring ball. He was number 4 coming out of, maybe a surprise number 4 coming out of training camp or coming out of spring. But when you have Cundiff and Pugh leave the program, you automatically have to step up. And he was the most complete package of everybody left. So it's good to see that he's growing into his role.
All right, we're going to take one more quick break. We're going to come back, talk a little more defense with Coach. I know I got a bunch of questions from people. Literally, one of them said, ask Coach about the 2-4-5, or why are we not playing another defensive lineman early? Why is this? So we're going to get into a little of that scheme stuff next on Locked On Badgers, and also just, what's the answer defensively, if there is one this year that they can pivot to against teams that are just going to try to line up and push the ball between the tackles. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers with Coach. First, a quick break for our friends of the show. Again, we talk about them, man, these relationships that we just stay with. LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been a tremendous partner for the Locked On Podcast Network because they are a tremendous human resource company. They're the place you go to if you need to make the right hire, right? If you need to find talent to add to your corporation, you need to add the 5-star receptionist, the 5-star wheelman. Wait, no, that's in bank robberies. I was thinking of the guy who changes tires in an automotive store. Either way, listen, if you want to rob a bank, find the 5-star wheelman on LinkedIn, probably. LinkedIn is the #1 spot to get all your talent. Go over to linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. They are the ultimate spot to find all the right hires, screening tools, everything you need over at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. All right. Appreciate every single person for tuning in, and always appreciate Coach for jumping in when we're able to get him. We did this all last year as much as possible. We'll try to do it this year. Coach, definitely before we get started, where can people find all the work you're doing?
Yep. As always, just look for the Dairy Raid on YouTube, Substack. Got the first two, or by the time this comes out, the first two quarters will be out. I'm trying to spread it out a little bit, have a little bit shorter videos. My first one was 49 minutes, so it's just as long as last year for one quarter. But they ran 30 plays in the first quarter. What are you going to do? So it's going to continue for the rest of the week, and then sprinkling in some new other things here and there. And that's about it. Everything at the Dairy Raid.
Let's talk defense. I think if you were to break down, like if you were to aggregate all the discourse after the game, it was didn't love the rush defense. Linebackers maybe not as disruptive as we had hoped. A lot of 2-4-5. Secondary looks great. I think that was kind of the general consensus. What there do you think needs picking apart a little bit more?
I think we had some run fit issues with the linebackers. I think Cheney had a bad game. I think he was distracted by what I like to call eye candy. Motion, movement, stuff like that really distracted him. And that gave up cutbacks that caused the run fit to get screwed up. When he's not set in the run fit, then, Hunter Wohler coming from behind him, his run fit gets screwed up. So that's important. If it was me, maybe I'm playing Christian Allegro a little bit more in that spot. I know he's Jaheim Thomas's backup, but I kind of want to get Allegro on the field a little bit more. Part of me is thinking that Cheney is this year's Braylon Allen, and maybe he's playing. Maybe when he has a bunch of bad reps like that and he's still in the game, maybe there's other reasons why he's still in the game. But anyways, I think run fits were bad for the linebackers for sure. Mm-hmm. I think the outside linebackers at time were thinking too much. And when they didn't think, they executed. You saw that with Witt on that big short yardage stop where they just attacked. I think Pius had a couple good reps, and it's good to see Elijah Hills getting a few good reps, because again, we heard nothing about him during spring ball, nothing positive about him anyways. So the linebackers got to get better at the run fits. And, I hear a lot of people talking about why we're running a lot of 2-4-5. I want people to go back and to look at when Wisconsin played spread teams under Jim Leonard. And then look back at the defense we ran against spread teams with Justin Wilcox and with Dave Aranda. It's the 2-4-5. We've been running the 2-4-5 at Wisconsin for 10 years. So this is not new. Mm-hmm. It's just we don't have the NFL dudes that those teams had. So what that means is we have to execute better. And when Jake Cheney is chasing eye candy instead of fitting his gap, that's going to happen. And we saw it. So the debate, either 2-4-5 or 3-3-5, it's about getting the gaps filled. And right now they think that they fit the gaps better with 2-4-5 personnel. And I would tend to agree, since right now we think that the defensive line is a source of worry. And especially because if you're going to go 3-3-5, then one of those three guys has to be a pass rusher. And if you don't think you have a pass rusher in those three guys, then you need to bring the pass rusher at linebacker. And if you can't get pass rush from linebacker, well, that's another issue. But it's fitting what you have best with what you're trying to do.
And that's really close to a point I was making, which makes me feel better because you're smarter than I am. But I just think it's really driven by the fact that they don't love the complete depth at the defensive line, and they really like a lot of their linebackers. Like, they want more reps for Allegro. They want to find Cheeks some moments. They want to get. I mean, Tyler Jansey looked good in fall. It's a way to get their better players on the field. And quite frankly, like, I thought Jaheim Thomas had a couple weird run fits as well. I thought Cheney, to your point, several times, they just kind of overran the play. Cheney, to me, almost looked like a guy who doesn't realize he got a lot quicker. and he almost overran a couple and just was out of space.
And he is very athletic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he needs to be athletic in a smaller box, because when you give him too much room to operate, he just kind of goes wild. And that it can be a problem. I mean, when you're playing a system that has to be so fundamentally sound, because you don't have a tighter defense full of NFL guys, you have to be more disciplined, and you can't chase eye candy.
Let me ask you this, because you mentioned they have to execute better, and I 100% agree. Like, they have to run fits, but ultimately, there's only so much you can do when you don't have a Keanu Benton, a Matt Henningsen, and Isaiah Loudermilk. These are NFL guys, and I think sometimes people forget, like, these are NFL guys. I think there's not a great answer this year, is my point, until they can upgrade the defensive line spot.
No, and it's not from lack of trying. I mean, they're recruiting, they're trying to move guys around. You know, they're doing all that, and then sometimes the team just doesn't have the dudes. Also, again, we're playing a system that, I mean, you look at those NFL guys. None of those guys came in as high star pass rushing specialists. They grew within a system, and they played the same roles that we're looking for now: run stopping 1 techs, gap controlling 3 techs with a little bit of pass rush ability, stuff like that. Our high school kids wanting to come to college to do that, or they all want to be wide nines rushing the passer and getting after it, and then people are saying, well, maybe we should play a more player friendly system, or a system that would attract more of those kids. But I don't think to get to the point where people talk about, I don't think we can recruit those type of kids. So we got to build a system within the type of kids that we think we can recruit. And I think we can with the system, because we've done it before, but we just need time for those. We need time for those hidden gems to make themselves known, or for those hidden gems time to develop.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think consistently you're going to struggle to attract those wide 9 guys. I think maybe a guy like Nicholas Clayton can kind of be that in this year's class. But again, like, not everybody hits either. So if you land one and he doesn't hit, like, yeah, I think it's a good point. Coach, as always, man, very grateful to have you on. Love having Coach Anderson on, because he's sharp, he's insightful, he's authentic. Go check out his work. I retweeted the first video you did on the first quarter, man. But I encourage everybody to go check out what he's doing over the Dairy Raid. We'll continue to do these coaches breakdowns as long as he'll slum it with me before he blows up too much. He is Coach Anderson. Love it. This is Locked On Badgers on Wisconsin, and we will definitely talk tomorrow.